Solid FPS here, and in this video you're going to find out why the Tamer LMG isn't worth using, what weapons you should use instead, and how to mod them to maximize damage. I'm sorry you got baited by other YouTubers that didn't pay attention to math class, but I'm here to set you straight because some of you Tamer users end up in Twitch streams like mine, armed with misinformation from YouTube, and someone's gotta do something about it. History repeats itself with every new game in this genre, and this one is no exception. Now, for the sake of this conversation, we're only going to look at guns that use general rounds. That means SMGs, ARs, and LMGs only. I'm not going to tell some poor soul that dropped resources into their Tamer to go into a completely different ammo type. You can rebound from your mistakes pretty quickly if you stay in this lane. General rounds weapons are actually incredibly strong, and it's because of one simple reason. Their critical damage mods are overtuned. Seriously, look at this. With better concentration and concentration priority, you get 194.8% more critical hit damage. If we look at weak point mods like weak point sight and have aiming, you only get 75% more weak point damage. That's already twice as much crit damage to weak point damage. Keep this ratio in mind as we look at other weapon types. Meanwhile, impact round weapons like hand cannons and scout rifles only get 79.8% critical hit damage, which is almost 2.5 times less than what we saw with general rounds. But their weak point mods are the same at 75%. Special round weapons also have this problem. They only get 95.8% more critical hit damage with the same mods. And again, looking at weak point damage mods, they're the same at 75%. High power weapons like sniper rifles, rocket launchers, and shotguns, same problem. They only get 71.1% more crit damage from better concentration and concentration priority. And only 55% weak point from weak point sight and focus fire, since they don't even have a 40% have aiming mod. Anyways, you get the idea, right? General round critical damage multiplier mods are incredible. They also scale 2.5 times harder than weak point does. That means the best guns in this category have to have high base crit stats to be competitive because the mods are such an outlier. Now let's look at the most overhyped gun in the first Descendant's short history, the Tamer. Only 10% base crit chance, 1.6x base crit damage, and 1x weak point? It's looking weak already. Imagine using this? Couldn't be me. Now let's look at some real guns, the ones you should chase down and max out. Like SMGs, check out the Thunder Cage. 20% base crit chance, 2x base crit damage, and 1.2x base weak point. It's already a massive improvement, and the game basically hands you this for free. Grinding out another 4 copies to max out the ability is worth it for the faster reload and guaranteed explosion on kill. Do you want a reliable SMG that is good on every character and in basically all content this game has to offer? Max out your Thunder Cage. It's worth it. Like ARs, check out the Eternal Willpower. 20% base crit chance, 1.5x base crit damage, and 1x base weak point. This purple AR outperforms the ultimate ARs in terms of DPS, and the base crit stats are the main reason why. It's also incredibly cheap to reroll the stats until you get 4 gold stats you wanted. Super easy to get and max out, so if you like ARs, this is the best choice. Maybe you are using the Tamer because you like LMGs. Set your sights on this thing instead. Enduring Legacy, 20% base crit chance, 1.7x base crit damage, and 1x base weak point. This LMG has nice crit stats, but it also has a unique ability that makes her single target DPS go up before building it to do fire damage. Everyone knows a guy that can't aim well, right? Not you, your friend of course. Tell your friend to use this because it's a crit and elemental based weapon, so it should have the highest DPS for people that can't hit weak points or headshots as consistently as they should. This gun will take the most effort to chase and max out in this list, but if you like LMGs, this is the best choice. Now that you know which guns are good, how should you build them? Rule number 1, don't trust in-game DPS tooltips. If you're the kind of gamer that trusts the in-game DPS tooltip, you've been doing it wrong. Learn the fundamentals of how damage works in this game, and then you'll make better decisions on blindly trusting green arrows. It's good clickbait for YouTube though, so I'm probably going to find a way to add DPS into the thumbnail for this video when I make one after recording this. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Anyways, one good example of the in-game DPS tooltip being bad is when you put a weak point damage mod on your gun. That DPS number never goes up. Except, most good gun builds should have at least one weak point mod on them because at the end of the day, this is a shooter and there are heads and weak points to aim at. It's a damage multiplier, and if you're not taking advantage of this, your DPS will be less than someone who does. Now, the fundamentals of damage in this game are really simple. You mod for attack, crit chance, crit damage, weak point, and fire rate. The biggest numbers you're going to see with a gun in this game is when you get a critical hit on a weak point. There's also elemental damage like extra fire or electric, but elemental damage isn't that great in this game because it does not multiply when you hit a weak point. It's a situational pickup like for Enduring Legacy's unique effect, where the whole gun performs better if you're burning enemies. Anyways, accounting for the fundamentals, that means that almost every generic gun build should look like this, which leaves room for only one gold special mod that might make you tweak things further. And there are only 3 gold mods even worth talking about that scale better than everything else in this category. Sharp Precision Shot. This one penalizes your fire rate by 20, but it ramps up after 5 seconds of shooting, which ends up giving you 20 fire rate and 60 attack. The moment you stop shooting, it falls off. This is only viable on LMGs. Mental Focus. This one reduces fire rate by 10, but stacks up to 150% attack with constant fire. This one is also only viable on LMGs, but if you play Glay with infinite ammo, then it becomes best in slot. What's really cool about Mental Focus is that it has a forgiving 2-second window, so you can just keep building it and refreshing it if your reload is faster than 2 seconds. Real Life Fighter. This one reduces accuracy by 20%, but gives you up to 100% attack if you're hitting nothing but weak points. To me, this is generally the best all-around DPS mod in the game, because the only time your gun needs more damage is when you're fighting a boss, and you should be laying into those weak points non-stop. Remember when I said don't trust DPS tooltips? My Thundercade sits at 448,000 DPS in-game, but I promise you that this is one of the highest DPS mod setups you could possibly have on this gun. The only point to address with this mod setup is that you have minus 40% accuracy, but you can mitigate that with a high FOV, I play at 120, and by getting closer to the enemy. I also main Glaze, so this accuracy penalty is a non-issue for me whenever I use Massacre. If you want it to feel better in terms of sustained DPS, then you can swap out the purple half aiming mod for a blue expand weapon charge mod to increase your mag size and reduce the accuracy penalty. My Eternal Willpower is built the same way, and just in case you haven't heard me say it enough times, don't trust DPS tooltips. Look at this thing, it sits at only 484,000 DPS in game. All the fundamental damage mods slotted in, and I'm using Real Life Fighter. This gun seems to have pretty good accuracy even with the minus 40% penalties, so this build is absolutely peak damage output when you're shooting heads and weak points. Now, I don't have an Enduring Legacy farmed up ahead of this video, but I can tell you how I'd build it. First, we slot in the fundamentals just like what you see here. Then, this is where we decide how far we need to go into supporting the Enduring Legacy's unique ability. Remember, enemies have to be burning, so we need some part of our gun to do fire damage. We can do that with a 30% fire enhancement mod, or with fire attack rolled on the gun, or both. Since this gun reduces enemy fire resist, the safe bet is to equip fire enhancements so we do an additional 30% of our gun's attack as fire, which could scale reasonably well as the fire resistance debuff stacks up. On top of that, boosting mag size by 49% is another safe bet to give Enduring Legacy more sustained DPS. Finally, we can slot in our gold mod. For me personally, I'm always going to use Real Life Fighter until something stronger gets added to the game. If your aim, no I mean your friend's aim, is allergic to hitting weak points, then maybe take a look at Fire Conductor. Wait a sec, wasn't this video supposed to tell me why Tamer sucks? Just how bad is my Tamer compared to these guns? We covered how the crit on the weapon just doesn't scale up enough, but what we haven't done is quantify that. Well now, you're about to find out. This is going to be a lot to take in if you've never been a serious min-maxer in a game like this before. But the main takeaway here, if the spreadsheet is making your head spin, is that the guns I mentioned in this video are all around 50% better than Tamer. Look at that poor Tamer sitting at the bottom of the chart in red, and look at what you could have instead in blue. The point of looking at guns like this, with completely perfect mod and weapon roll variations, is that we want to know what happens when guns are completely perfect and played perfectly. Obviously, if your friend can't hit weak points, they aren't pumping as hard as the spreadsheet implies. A spreadsheet can solve for peak output, but it can't solve for a skill issue. Anyways, for the more mathematically inclined people that stuck around this long, let's get into some details. DPS calculations include Colossus attack bonuses and weak point multipliers, since those are the spongiest enemies in the game and the only enemies where min-maxing like this truly matters. I also averaged out the performance of Real Life Fighter, Mental Focus, and Sharp Precision Shot, so that those conditional mods can be reflected in the results since they're incredibly powerful mods. I'll click on those cells so you can see the formulas I came up with, some of which to update dynamically based on RPM and fire rate. Real Life Fighter only takes 10 weak point hits to build up to max, so over time this mod will approach a 100% attack increase if you never miss. My formula for this only accounts for one mag. If you don't miss, reload and keep shooting, then your next mag would start with a 100% attack increase out the gate, and DPS numbers will look slightly higher over a longer sample size. Mental Focus averages out to be the sum of integers from 0 to 149 plus however many shots you can shoot at 150 stacks before you have to reload. If we only have 150 rounds, then it's basically a 75% attack increase, but comes standard with a 10% fire rate loss. If we had infinite ammo like Glay, then this mod will approach but never quite reach 150% attack increase. Sharp Precision Shot takes 5 seconds to build up from 0 to 60% attack increase and from minus 20 to 20 fire rate increase. That means that average fire rate increase in that 5-second window is 0, and the average attack increase should be 30. Then in your next 5 seconds, you'd fully benefit from the mod, so it's expected that over a 10-second window, this mod gives us an average 45% attack increase and a 10% fire rate increase. It's a lot easier to understand this mod when you look at it like this. Well, that's the end of the video. Make sure to send this video to your tamer friends so they can stop holding you back in boss fights. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, like and subscribe for future content. Remember, I don't main YouTube, I usually stream over on Twitch, but man is it exhausting dealing with the impact that other YouTubers have on the community when you're just trying to stream the grind. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.